Hi, and welcome to Attentive Healthcare Solutions webinar. We're excited to present Automate Multiple Encounters in NextGen PM. My name is Chelsea Grover, and I'm the Marketing Communications Manager for Attentive. I'd like to take a moment to explain the process for today's presentation. First, I'd like to mention that this webinar will be recorded, and we'll send out a copy of the slides along with the recording within the next week. Now, as most of you know, this is usually when we cover a bit of who we are with you. But since I promised in the webinar invitation to make this one brief, we're just going to jump straight into it. And as an FYI, everyone's phone will remain muted the entire time. Please use the webinar control panel to ask any and all questions. We'll answer them in the end, but you can type them in anytime. So let's get the ball rolling with two super quick polls here. So if everybody will take a look at their screen, just a quick select one answer. When multiple encounters in NextGen are needed for a single patient visit, how many are typically needed for your practice? So we're just trying to get a better feel for your practice's needs so that we can really focus on that, make sure that we're hitting the mark with all the attendees today and make sure that we're giving you the information that you need for the reason that you joined us today. So I will close this in 5, 4, 3, 2, any last minute votes? Are we done? Okay, let me go ahead and close this. So if you're interested to see where you stack up with what other people were saying, it looks like the majority of you are doing 2 and some of you are doing 3. So at least as far as people who voted, it looks like our most is 3. So guys, I'll let you focus on that when we start doing the demo part of it today. And let me hide this one and share the second. Launch this one. Okay, again, real quick, this one is select all that apply. For what purposes do you create several encounters? Maybe professional fees, facility or surgical fees, anesthesia, specialized diagnostic equipment or procedures, or durable medical equipment / other. So if everybody will take a minute to vote, it looks like we have about 23% of the votes in so far. Oh, more people are voting. It's starting to even up the playing field. So I will close this one in 5, 4, 3, 2, and okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this. So this one's interesting to me. I don't think we've ever had it split quite this evenly before, but it looks like most people are using it for professional fees, and then everyone else is split with all of them. So looks like you guys are going to have a lot to cover today. And with that, I'm gonna just let the guys jump right into it. Your presenters for today are going to be Tom Seco. He's Attentive's Business Development Manager, and Joe Schultz is the Vice President of Product Solutions. Joe and his team are the people that actually built this NextGen add-on, so thus he's going to be in a great position to demonstrate it. But I think that Tom's going to go over a quick overview first before the demo. So Tom, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Chelsea, and thank you everyone for taking the time to view our webinar today. So here's the agenda that we're going to cover today. The format for today's webinar is I'm going to take you through a slide to give you an overview of Multiple Encounter BillingManager software and how it helps increase the efficiency and effectiveness of the billing staff. And I'm going to turn it over to Joe, and Joe's going to take you through a demonstration of the product so you can actually see how it works. And as Chelsea mentioned, we'll answer any questions that you have at the end of the demonstration. So when we're done, you'll learn that this add-on product to practice management can help you become more effective and more efficient when entering in multiple encounters for a single patient visit. So with that, Multiple Encounter Billing Manager is a product that we created from the request of our clients. These practices had the need for creating several encounters for a single patient visit, and were cumbersomely having to go through multiple screens to complete the work. So let's say, for example, you have a certain procedure where you have to enter in, typically have to enter in professional charges and anesthesia charges and surgery center charges. Well, typically what you probably have to do is you have to toggle through several screens or go to 3 different screens to enter in each of these charges. And what Billing Manager does is it enables you to create all of these encounters related to that particular procedure from a single screen. So you no longer have to toggle through or go to multiple screens to do it. So this ends up creating a much needed efficiency by significantly reducing the time that it takes to do all of this work. And I think you're going to see that in the demonstration that Joe takes you through. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joe, and Joe's going to take you through a demonstration.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Chelsea, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. We appreciate your time. We're going to switch over to the demo PC here, and we're going to take you through the multi-encounter billing manager. When this gets installed, it gets installed as an add-on into NextGen, so only the people in the right groups will have permission to be able to launch it. And as Tom mentioned, when you're using this tool, what we're really doing is condensing all the work you do on screens to set up the different encounters and the charges under those encounters onto a single screen. And that screen can spread across practices if needed. So if you have a clinic and a surgery center and maybe another practice set up for your anesthesia, you can do that all from here in this one screen. So when we look at this screen to begin with, it's really kind of unassuming. We have somewhere to enter our base encounter number, and the base encounter is really the encounter that gets created to check in, because normally you're still going to check the patient in, there's going to be an encounter created, there's going to be insurances on that encounter, and that encounter is going to become our template to use for these other encounters that need to be created. Now, several of you live in several different scenarios, several different worlds where you need to create encounters for different things. What I've done here is in the demo environment, we're configured for ophthalmology, but the great thing about this tool is that it is reconfigurable. One of the things we'll work with you on during installation and setup is figuring out which encounters you need to create and what purposes they serve. So we'll go in and build out your configuration. And this is what we're seeing here in the screen that I just opened. So in this case, for the demonstration today, we're going to look at having professional charges, A-scan charges, so just a specialty diagnostic equipment type of charge, ASC charges, and then anesthesia charges. As we build this out, we'll pick one of them that'll be the base encounter. Again, that's that one that gets created when the patient checks in. Maybe they check in on the surgery center side and we'll start there, or maybe we check in on the practice side, or maybe it's all the same practice and you just need to create several encounters within that same practice. But regardless, we'll designate one of them as the base encounter, so that one's going to be existing in NextGen. And then we have options over here. Do we want to use the base encounters insurances? So for any of these other encounters that we create, we want to map it insurance-wise from that base encounter. And then we can set the minimum and maximum number of encounters for each of those categories to create. And 0 just kind of means that it's optional. 2 is the maximum that you'd want to create. In many cases, it's probably going to be 1 and 1. You're going to create one encounter for each of these, but the system is flexible enough where you could change that up. Now, you could also decide, instead of using the base encounters insurances, maybe you want to use the last encounters insurance from that practice. So that's an option too that you have available. We can take the rendering and referring from the base encounters and map them to map the rendering to become the referring, and then let you pick a new rendering in that other practice. All right, so we have that ability to kind of crisscross them as we create the encounters that would be in the other practice. Maybe the physician that saw the patient at the clinic is not the surgeon or not the anesthesiologist, right? So in which case they'd become the referring. So here in this column, it's what do we put in for the referring on these new encounters? So basically it says, okay, take the base encounters rendering and make that the referring, and then leave the rendering blank, and then we'll go ahead and select that as part of the grid. And then typically you'd probably want all of them to have the same date as the original encounter, even if you're entering several days later, just because that way they'll all match up and the claims will flow through evenly on the actual date of service. So we'll help you build out all this depending on how many different encounters you need to create. The great news is you can do up to 7 of them. And what I mean by great news is most of you picked 2 or 3, no one picked 6+, but right now it does up to 7. We could expand that if we ever needed to, but for certain reasons, we just put in that limitation right now for programming purposes. So I have 4 of them set up here, which is a few more than many of you will actually need. Again, the takeaway here is that the system's flexible and you'll be able to build it out for your scenario, whether that's a clinic encounter and DME or a clinic encounter, surgery and anesthesia. You get to pick which ones of these you want to create. Now, I've talked several times about the base encounter. That's going to be the one that's already existing in NextGen. So if we have a report we're working off of, or if we have another screen up with the charges that we need to enter, we'll know that base encounter number. We also have the ability to be able to search for that encounter number. So we could put in the last name, first name, and find the patient and get the encounter number from there. In this case, I know the encounter number, so I'm going to bring it up. And here's our encounter that's going to become our base encounter. And if you think about in NextGen, when you're creating a new encounter, some of the fields that need to be set on that, like the location, the rendering provider, the date of it. So we're going to take the relevant fields that you need, put them on this level of this grid here, and then underneath that is going to be one or more charges. All right, so in the base encounter, they put in a charge 99215. And the header is 3 lines, and so is the data. So it highlights the one that's currently active. Now these ones I can tell here are already existing in NextGen. They're marked as enroll. So they're not part of this set of encounters we're going to create here yet, but it does exist in NextGen. We're going to see a different status besides enroll for these new ones that we're going to create. Now let's say we want to go ahead and put in our ASC charges. So here we have this other category that we set up that we were showing you on the other screen. So we can either right mouse or down below it generates hotkeys so you can keep your fingers on the keyboard as much as possible if you're trying to breeze through these and do the data entry quickly. But we can go ahead here and go, let's create a new surgery center encounter. And then it has our location. This is the default. This is the practice that was set. And in this case, we're going to create the new encounter in a different practice. Now, if the person is a patient in the clinic, but it's just a globe in the surgery center, it'll automatically create the chart for them based on the information in the clinic. So it'll take care of that for us. So we can come over here then and go ahead and look for our, let's see if we have a provider out here. I'm going to go, thought we had one set up. There we go. Keeping these straight between demos. So in this case, we have Tanner, who's going to be our rendering. It pulled down our referring here from above. And now I can just do a Control N and we can put in a charge. So we can go ahead and look up the service item, pull that back in. It pulls the default information such as pricing from the service item. We can go ahead and override that if we need to. It also pulls down the diagnosis codes from the charges that were entered in the other practice. If we want, we can go ahead and add additional ones here that were, maybe relevant for this practice. And we'll see now this one is insert where this one is enroll. So what insert means is that it only exists here on the screen. It doesn't exist yet in NextGen. So we can build this all out, and then when we're done, we can go ahead and hit save. If we make a mistake, we can go ahead and delete something here before we save it to NextGen. Now we can also add the anesthesia charges. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll add a new encounter for anesthesia. And we'll go here and see, we'll just pick one of our renderings here. Actually, for this one, I should have a couple of them. So let's pick Frank and pull that down. So now we're going to set up an encounter in our anesthesia practice. So this is creating encounters across 3 different practices. Now you could do this all within the same practice, 2 of 3 practices, however you're set up. So I'm going to go ahead and set the charge. So I did a Control N to get to the new charge. I could also right mouse and I can pick an anesthesia service item here. And then because it's anesthesia, it has things we can enter like the amount of time for the anesthesia, and it'll respect the rounding rules that are set up for the provider and the insurance in NextGen. In this case, we can see from the base encounter, here was the primary insurance. Calculated 131 minutes, which came out to 9 units. It did the math up here and came out with $810. Of course, you can override that if you need to also. So on this single screen, without having to jump around NextGen, we've set it up so we had our base encounter and we added our additional encounters. And if we wanted to have several charges off this, we can keep doing Control N and pulling in the additional charges. So now we're going to go ahead and save this, and it's going to create those encounters and those charges in NextGen. And in the real world, we'd go on and put in our next base encounter number and work that. But I can go ahead and pull this up, and we can see now that these are all linked together. The status is none because they've all been built and tracked now as a set within the multi-encounter billing manager, so it knows they all kind of match up together. And we can even go into NextGen and take a look at one of these that was created. So we can go to our Peachtree Surgery Center and find encounter number 32 and see what was done for us. So let's switch over here to our other practice. And then we'll go ahead and pull up that encounter. So when it pulled the information from the base encounter, here's our rendering and referring that we set up. If we go over here to the transactions, we can see the charge that was input here. So what we're looking to do here is give you, again, that single screen where you can enter several encounters without having to jump all around. It gives you a streamlined way to be able to put those in, do it quickly, save it into NextGen, and go on to your next one. So that way you're always working in that same screen, and especially for those of you who have multiple practices, you're not having to toggle back and forth on NextGen between the practices, reset what patient you're working on, go find them, go find the encounter. We created this about 5 years ago, working with ophthalmology group, hence the reason we have that set up here in the demo. And they've been using it to post charges in this kind of environment for that length of time, and the time savings they've really become to depend on this tool. So it is a great testament to how well it works and what it does in NextGen. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to Tom, and Tom may cover a little more, and then we'll answer any questions that you have on this and find out if it fits into your scenario.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Joe. And thank you for taking you through this demonstration to see how the software can increase efficiency and effectiveness of the billing staff using the multiple encounter billing manager software. So as Joe mentioned, the next steps, if you want to have if you have some interest in having a more detailed discussion on the multiple encounter billing manager software and how it would fit within your organization and how it might be set up in your organization, you can give me a call or send me an email, or give Joe a call and send him an email, and we can schedule time to go through a more detailed discussion with you. This would give you the opportunity to ask more detailed questions as it pertains to your practice and to your environment and to your current processes. So what we'll do now is we'll take any questions that you have.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tom, and thank you, Joe. And again, everybody, thank you for joining us today. We only have a few questions. We're going to go through them in the order that we received them. So if you have one, don't hesitate to ask. That's what we're here for. We purposefully went through this real fast just to give you a high-level overview so you could have time to ask questions and dig into it deeper to know, what you want to know about it. So first question, would it be possible to use these multiple encounters with one practice and different locations?
I'll go ahead and jump on that one. Absolutely. I had it set up as kind of the more extreme case where you have several practices, but you can take each of those categories and set them to be the same practice. And you can even set a default other location for them, or they could all be the same location. Now, the location that we set up in the configuration is just a default, so you can override it as needed. So yes, it is flexible that way.
Perfect. Can Billing Manager be configured to other specialties?
Billing Manager is written to be flexible, so yes, it can be configured to other specialties. It works in quite a few of them, whether it's gastro or eye care or a cardiology, anywhere where you might have kind of a complex care team or a surgery type of opportunity.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Would this also work for a patient seen in the ER and have radiology charges on the same docs, different locations? Same
On the
days,
same data service? Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Potentially, yes. We'd be curious to talk to you a little more in detail about your specific scenario. So if you can reach out to Tom, we can set up a demo and then we can dig down deep into what you're looking to accomplish and see if this is a good fit or not for you.
How about BH, which has timed sessions for billing?
Right now, it doesn't do the time-based sessions, but again, reach out to us just because that is something we're looking to add as NextGen has gotten deeper into adding those capabilities in the practice management side. We'd look to be able to leverage that too. So finding a partner to work with on that would be awesome.
Is it possible to move charges from an original encounter to a separate encounter if all charges were put on one at first but should have been put on a second?
Today, it just creates the encounters and the charges. It's not really a maintenance tool where you do that. However, and again, I'd be curious to hear more from you. We have had this come up once or twice in the past where they just hang everything off of one encounter and then later on create other encounters. But in the case where it's an error and it's kind of a one-off to do it that way, this probably wouldn't be the way you'd want to move those around.
Okay, while we wait to see if there's any more questions, I did want to mention that on Thursday, we're going to be doing another quick demo. This one's going to be on ChartGuard, which is our downtime solution. Creates PDF copies of your patient charts on a 3-day rolling cycle so that even if you lose access to the internet, the power, your system, basically any system outage, you can still continue to see patients. So if you're curious in learning more about that, feel free to drop me a note in the questions panel and I'd be happy to get you registered for it. And it looks like that might be all the questions that we have. If you think of any questions after the fact, you see both Tom and Joe's information up on the screen. You can feel free to reach out to them directly. Otherwise, you can always reply back to the email that I'll be sending with a link to the slides and recording within the next couple of days here. Basically, any way that you can get a hold of us, we're happy to help. That's why we're here. So please don't hesitate to ask. And a couple of those questions were really good ones. And we'd love to chat with you more one-on-one and see what we might be able to do. So please don't hesitate. Reach out to us. And hope to see you on Thursday, and I hope everybody has a great day, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, everyone.